That was great. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Mosquitoes.
That was disgusting. You have blood all over your neck right now.
I'm good.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Welcome to session 1 of Lifelong Learning, a course in unschooling.
So in this session, we're going to cover what unschooling can be. And we say it that way because, again, we want to emphasize that unschooling is very different for each and every family. And that's what's amazing about it, because unschooling is a method of education advocating for learner-chosen activities as the primary means of learning. Learning through natural life experiences such as play, everyday life activities and responsibilities, personal interests and curiosities, mentorship, apprenticeship, and internship, hands-on experiences like libraries, museums, local community activities,
Local
and so
parks.
on. Yeah, parks, recreation, anything that's available to you in your region, or if you like to travel as a family, you can go and experience world travel along with that. So to go along with a list of what unschooling can be, some people also choose to offer curriculum as a resource for their children. That can look like just having curriculum in the home, and then the child decides, when and where and how to utilize it.
We do that.
Yep.
We have curriculum like workbooks, things that we just make available on the bookshelf with other books.
Yeah,
the kids
it's
are
just
free
a part
to
of
utilize
our library.
as part of providing resources for them to use as they want.
Mm-hmm. And that's a significant thing about unschooling, is as a parent, one of our roles is to just provide resources so that as they pursue their passions, they have what they need available to learn and to grow in that area. And fortunately, there's so many resources out there, and a lot of them actually do happen to be free. So, and we'll get into that in another section, that it doesn't have to be expensive to be unschoolers. So along with curriculum, some families choose to take formal classes as well. And formal classes can be a great resource in your unschooling, as long as it is child-led or passion-led, and not compulsory. Then they have the freedom to utilize formal classes as a good resource.
Yeah, all about providing those resources, but again, letting the child direct that and choose it and pursue their own passions and interests.
And within that, it can be difficult, but giving them the ability to quit when they've fulfilled their passion in that area.
Yeah.
So for instance, we recently got a ukulele for one of our kids, and that passion was strong from the get-go, and they were taking YouTube courses and got all these apps and everything, and were really into it, and then one day it just weaned, and we needed to be okay with that, even though we provided this resource for this child. But knowing that if it is their passion, they're going to pick it right back up where they want to, or it's just not the path that they've chosen.
Right.
And that kind of leads us to...
Well, just the fact that we could force her to play the ukulele, and that's the quickest way to kill a passion, and so rather than getting frustrated that she's no longer playing it, being patient and allowing her that freedom, and she may pick it back up, another time. Unschooling encourages exploration activities chosen by the learners themselves. And the more child-directed the learning is, the more meaningful it will be, and the more that joy and love for learning grows. So remember that we said in our intro, one of the goals of this course and the goals of unschooling is to cultivate in our children that love for learning. That is the goal. Right. And so the more child-directed it is, the more that love for learning will grow. It's interesting that we often separate adults and children in the way that we learn. But imagine then, as an adult, if there was something you wanted to learn, a topic you wanted to learn about, or a skill you wanted to obtain, how would you go about learning that? Well, there's all kinds of options. You could take an online course, you could search up YouTube videos, you could enroll in a class at a community college, or you could search out an expert in your area that could train you in that skill that you want to learn. Like, there's all kinds of, you can go to the library and get books, all kinds of options that you would take to learn this skill or this new passion that you have. Well, it's no different with children in the way that they learn.
Yeah, I think often we kind of forget, as adults, the way that we learn, and we put something else on our children, and we assume that they learn differently than we do. But that's something that we've discovered through our journey with unschooling, is we have to remind ourselves, like, the way that we enjoy life is no different than the way that our children can also enjoy life.
Yeah, that's right. So that's what unschooling is all about, giving them that freedom and trusting the process, that there is an innate ability in our children to learn. You never had to teach a baby how to walk or to talk or to eat. Those things, although some people try to teach them, those things happen naturally in a child. They're always learning and absorbing what they hear, what they see, what they touch, what they smell. Learning is happening all the time. And the quickest way to shut that down is to suddenly put them at a desk and force them to learn something, and to impose this teaching on them or whatever. But again, allowing them that freedom to pursue their passions is what unschooling is all about. All right, so let's move on to some myths about unschooling. Now, this list isn't exhaustive, but here are 7 main objections or misunderstandings or misconceptions about unschooling. Number 1, we often hear, is unschooling is illegal. Well, in most of the world, that is false, at least the Western world. Unschooling falls under the legal category of homeschooling. So the U.S., the UK, Canada, Australia, some parts of Asia, Malaysia and Indonesia, where we are now, all recognize homeschooling as a legal alternative to the government school system.
So each state, each country, wherever you're at, there's going to be different legalities or requirements for unschooling specifically. So wherever you're at, you need to take the time to research, because there are vast differences. But there's also many different ways to fulfill those requirements too without compromising your unschooling principles.
Right. So for the U.S., for instance, it obviously varies from state to state, the requirements. But in some states, there's a requirement of filing an intent, a notice of intent with your state school board to show that you have the intention of homeschooling your children. And in some states, there's an annual submission of like achievements or standardized test scores, things like that. Some states might require you to do specific subjects, but understand, just because they might require you to do specific subjects, that they're not telling you how that you should cover those subjects.
That's true.
And so, as in unschooling, life happens and learning happens through life, then subjects are covered just in your daily life.
Yeah, we can cover that more too when we get to our principles specifically. But yeah, there's many ways to fulfill subjects and requirements simply by observing. But we'll get into that a little bit more in our principles section.
So we would recommend starting like a home unschooling portfolio or journal to begin really just journaling their progress year after year. Keeping record of just like projects that they do on their own, drawings, things that they write, things that they create, books that they read, and just trying to kind of keep a portfolio of the things that they do so that you have some evidence, some things to go back on to show what they've been doing. And that's good for you. Again, Keisha said we'll cover these in our principles later, but it's a good way for you to be able to evaluate the growth of your child's learning by looking back in your journals from years past to see what things that they were struggling through and what hurdles you've overcome. And so we highly recommend journaling everything you do.
So myth number 2 that we come up against a lot is unschooling is just lazy or neglectful parenting, and that we just let our kids run wild. We believe this is false. Although we do let our kids run wild, it's actually intentional. And I know that you're imagining like pure chaos with our 6 kids just running amok. But unschooling requires a lot of indirect guiding from the parents and a lot of direct involvement when the kids want it, when they desire it. Intentionality is actually really key in unschooling. Without intentionality, you can have that unhealthy lack of self-discipline. And intentionality comes from both the parents and also the children. And I know that's another thing we get asked a lot is self-motivation. It does take self-motivation to be an unschooling family. But the parents can help a lot as a resource or as a tool for the children as we guide them through gentle parenting and questions and welcomed advice.
Yeah. We don't lack all structure in our home, but we don't dictate everything either as the parents. We do like to raise our children to eye level, that there's an equal voice, mutual love and respect. And so through frequent family meetings, several times throughout the week, anybody can call a family meeting, and we gather together to determine what our days look like, what our different responsibilities are. And so we decide together, we make decisions together, we vote on those things. And then we also have a set of guiding principles that we'll cover in session 3. And those principles really help us determine what our structure looks like. All right, number 3, unschooled kids are sheltered and unsocialized. This is a tired argument, although we can't say it's entirely false. But it's not limited to homeschooling or unschooling. Some parents just choose to shelter or micromanage their children and limit their ability to interact with the world around them. However, true unschooling, by its very nature, we believe, is quite the opposite, because as unschoolers, we give our children the freedom and ability to interact with their community. And so we do not believe that socialization needs to be an issue.
As a matter of fact, what you see often in unschooling is age integration. And so as kids are learning to interact with people of all ages, whether it's young babies that they're learning to nurture, or if they're learning from older children all the way up to adults, that interaction is key. A key role in unschooling.
Our kids, when we lived in Malaysia, were very involved in their community. We'd give them the freedom. They'd ride their bikes to the mall, and they'd use their own money to buy smoothies or go to the toy store. And they're interacting with people of all ages. The lady at the smoothie stand knew our kids by name. They knew the security guards at the mall, and they would interact with all kinds of people. We're very involved in the community around them.
But again, that goes back to the intentionality of the parents as well as the children.
Another thing that we've seen help with the socialization is that as our kids are pursuing their passions and interests, they might reach out to a mentor or to a local expert or someone that they want to learn from. And so again, then they're interacting with people of all ages.
So myth number 4, unschooled kids will not learn everything that they need to know. So this kind of piggybacks on some of the other things that we've touched already, like a lack of structure and things like that. Everyone learns at a different pace and in a different way. There's actually several different types of learners. And so to follow standards that kind of negate those different types of learning it is not helpful for the general population.
That's right. Yeah, you undermine the very principle of innate learning when you say you have to learn this at this age, exactly this time, you have to learn it this way. When you standardize all of that, you're limiting so much.
Yeah, and you're really creating gaps that people fall into. There's 2 different ditches, and then you've got the one main road, okay? So you can fall into this ditch of maybe you're like, oh, you're this uber awesome student, and you get put up on this pedestal, whatever. And then you're the standard, right? And then there's this other ditch of you're a little less than worthy in some cases is what it feels like to fail and to be held back. But really, it's not that they're failures or that these kids are excellent and these kids are standard. It's just that we're different learners and we learn at different paces.
Yeah.
So another thing about unschooling is a lot of learning happens through need. And so the more that you are socializing, right, the more that you're in community and exposed to what the community needs are, the more you face a need to learn. And so we live in a society where reading and mathematics are some of the foundational needs. And we find, though, that our kids are faced with that every single day. And so they don't miss out on that because they're a part of the community. They, for instance, like to play games, and there's certain games that require reading or require math. And if they want to participate, then they have to learn those things.
Yeah.
But we didn't have to force them to that, right?
Exactly.
It's something that they've discovered through need.
Something they wanted to do, and so therefore needed to learn something. And again, going back to that foundational principle at the beginning of this course, is that we're trying to instill in our children, cultivate in them this love for learning. And so when they've got that, they've already got this idea of they know how to learn something when they want to learn it. And so then when they're faced with the need to learn it, they know what to do. And so, yeah, just like allowing them to interact in the real world, reading a menu or figuring out how much something costs, giving them the freedom and responsibility, releasing them is what allows them to see really what those subjects in school might look like in the real world, which makes a lot more sense than they're learning real life rather than compartmentalizing subjects like a school system does, and that's not real life.
But again, going back to that comparison thing, you've got to be careful because we are learning in a different way. And so we may not follow those standards exactly just because of the different type of learning that we're introducing to our families.
That's good. All right, number 5. Unschooled kids will not be prepared for college or can't go to college. First of all, in the U.S., a homeschooled or unschooled student has the same opportunity as any other student. And as we said earlier, The requirements will differ from state to state and institution to institution. But in most cases, they only need to register to take the SATs in your county or take some placement tests. And honestly, just a few weeks of extra studying will prepare them for that. We'll cover more of that in the next session when we talk about our story and how we prepared for higher education, prepared for college. But again, giving our kids freedom to be able to pursue that or not pursue it is their choice. But they do have that opportunity. It's actually interesting. More universities now prefer unschooled or homeschooled students because they've proven to be more studious and have a stronger desire to actually be there because they're pursuing their passions, right? According to a study published in U.S. News, students from a homeschooled background graduated college at a higher rate than their peers and earned higher grade point averages along the way. Unschooled students don't go to college because they're expected to or it's required of them or someone's forcing them to. They go because they want to be there. They have a love for learning or a specific purpose or skill they want to obtain or trade or credentials that they're after.
So college or university is actually a great example of unschooling because you have the freedom to go or not to go. You have the freedom to take certain classes or not to take them. You have the freedom to quit at any time if it is not furthering your passions and desires for where you want to go in life.
Mm-hmm. So we found that unschoolers are perfectly capable and able to attend college, university, and beyond.
Myth number 6. Unschooling is just like hiring a private tutor or going to an alternative school. Unschooling is whatever your family makes it. As long as it is child-directed, it's unschooling. What? I'm not even really sure what you're trying to say in this one.
Okay. Unschooling is meaning, can't I just take my kids out of public school and then make them go to Montessori school? Is that not the same thing?
I mean, but it is. Like, there's unschoolers that go to unschooling schools.
I'm saying make them do it. That's my point.
Oh, well, that's not coming across.
Unschooling is just the same as making your...
Thank you. You don't have anything about making in there. It doesn't make sense.
Sorry, I thought it was...
Okay. So different than what I thought all of that was.
Okay. But then the alternative point, because I was a believer that if you put them in a class, you're not unschooling them. Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's not the case. If they're choosing to take the class, it still is unschooling. Yeah. You were the one that helped me direct this because you're the one that said, this was your quote, when they don't have the option and it becomes compulsory, they're no longer unschooling.
Okay, myth number 6. Unschooling is the same as making your kids go to an alternative school or hiring a private tutor. Again, this needs to be a family decision and is not a parent-led choice. It's okay for your kids to have a private tutor or for them to go to a Montessori school or to an unschooling school like Sudbury. However, again, one of the defining characteristics of unschooling is that it is child-led. Mm-hmm. So if they're in a situation where they don't have the option to move forward or to pull back or quit or whatever, then it becomes compulsory and they're no longer unschooling. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Number 7, unschooling is only for wealthy families who don't have to work regular jobs. So this is a tough one, but there are so many options. Unschooling doesn't have to be homeschooling. Although we do believe that a family integrated approach is best, there are a lot of options. Maybe you're a single parent and you're working full-time or working multiple jobs. We want you to understand that unschooling needs to be centered around community. That you don't need to do this alone. There are so many resources online Facebook groups, different things where you can get involved with other people. But then, looking for people in your community that are like-minded, and that can really, like, you're forming a team almost, where you're able to lean on each other, so that you're not having to do this alone. And so there are a lot of options, whether you're working full time, but you have a partnering family that's helping, and you guys are kind of sharing the load together, being able to lead and help your children learn together. The whole idea that it takes a village, really is true in unschooling, especially if you follow history long before school ever existed. Children have been learning just by shadowing the adults in the village. And so living in community is a great way to be able to, if you are forced to work other jobs, to be able to do this together in community. I hope that makes sense.
And I find too that you are actually more well-rounded when you're in community. And so, have those play dates and have those hours where you're at work, but someone else is with your kids and they align with your principles.
Yeah. Yep. And there's so many other free resources out there. So don't let money be an excuse. Obviously, I know we have to, you need to work, you need to pay bills, whatever. But as far as the actual expense of unschooling, it's really not a problem, because you don't have to travel the world. You don't have to have thousands of dollars to be able to do this. Just utilizing the free resources in your city, from museums and libraries and parks, things we've mentioned already. Online resources. There's so many different things that you can utilize.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're not being cavalier about the difficulties that this could present for certain families. But there are so many resources available, and it can be an option absolutely for everyone. And we would love to see more people gather together in communities to make this available. That's something that we definitely advocate for, is community centers based on providing everyone with the opportunity for the freedom to learn the way that they learn.
Yeah. So we'd like to end this session with just the understanding that unschooling, although is simple, it's not easy. And so we don't want to make it sound like this walk in the park, although there are simple principles, and simplicity, I think, is key. There's going to be a lot of obstacles and a lot of difficulties that you're going to have to overcome. And we'll hit some of those towards the end of the course. But having to deal with other family and people that maybe don't understand the choices that you're making for your family. And then, of course, just some of the financial things and the time restraints. There are obstacles that you're going to have to overcome, and we'll try to hit on some of those a little bit later.
So as we wrap up this session, we hope that we've helped to clarify what unschooling can be, and that maybe we've helped debunk some of the myths about what it's not.
Okay, so Dad.
What?